Welcome to your video on adding and subtracting fractions. I'm going to start by looking at fractions with like denominators. We'll discuss what I mean by that in a moment. So like denominators. So what I mean by that is something like 3/7 plus 2/7. Well, it's really important to understand what this denominator means, the bottom number. It means how many parts something is split into, or out of how many parts. And then the top number means and how many parts are we thinking about in terms of the chosen parts. So I've got 3/7, so that's 3 out of 7, plus 2/7. And I want to show you that with this diagram. So I've got this rectangle which has been divided up into 7 parts. So each one of these is 1/7 worth. 1/7, 2/7, 3/7, 4/7, 5/7, 6/7, 7/7 makes a whole. If I've got 3/7, then I've got that much. And if I add 2/7 to it, different type of shading, I've got 5/7 now in total. So it's really important to note that I do not add the denominators together. I only add the numerator. It's out of 7 parts that I'm talking about, and I'm adding 2/7 to 3/7. It would work exactly the same way if I took away. So if I had 3/7 and I took one of them away, I'd just be left with 2/7. So that's with like denominators. You just add the numerator, how many parts you are talking about. Now, let's look at fractions with unlike denominators, because that's where it gets tricky. Fractions with unlike denominators. So, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. I mean something like 1/2 plus 1/4. Now here, I cannot add them together because 1/2 and 1/4 are not out of the same number of parts. I can't. If I add the numerator to give me 2, 1 plus 1, I don't know what's going to go on the bottom. And what you need to do is you need to find the equivalent fraction with the same denominator. You need to find a common denominator and use it. And I'll give you an example here. Here I've got 1/2 of this box shaded in, and 1/4 of this one. So there's 1/4 here. I'm not sure if you can see the lines in my book well, but that's 1/2 plus 1/4. And you probably know that that's 3/4 already. But let's have a look at it. This 1/2 I could also say is 2/4. So I'm finding an equivalent fraction. 1/2 is the same as 2/4, and I'm going to use 2/4 because then I can add 1/4 to it. With the same denominator, I get an answer 3/4. I keep the denominator the same, just add the numerator. I've got them in the same size, the same number of parts it's been split into, so it will work. I can add them together. Same number of equally sized parts. So let's consider another example. Something like 1/2. So I'm going to write just here EG1, example 1, and here EG2. Just rule it off to keep it neat so you can see clearly it's a new example. And I'm going to do 1/2 plus, this time I'm going to do 1/3. Right, suddenly it's looking more tricky because I can't easily see that 1/2 is 1/4 and I just keep this one the same. I can't easily do that here. What I need to do is I need to be able to work out a number of parts that I can show a half as and a third as. And that's called finding the lowest common multiple. So I'm going to find the lowest common. Common means it is a multiple for both of them, so it's shared by both of them. So what's a multiple? That's both a multiple of 2 and a multiple of 3. Now make sure you're not getting confused with factors. Multiples of 2 are 2, because that's 2 times 1, 4, 6, 8, 10 and so on. Multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12 and so on. I'm looking for the lowest common multiple, and the lowest common multiple, if I was to write multiples, like a little list, multiples of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 and so on. Multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 and so on. Now 12 is a common multiple, it's common to both of them, but 6 is the lowest common multiple, so I'm going to choose 6. That's my lowest common multiple. Let's see what that actually means to a half plus a third. It means that I could show it as a half as out of 6. So just leaving myself enough space here. So I've got 6 boxes there, and a third I can show as out of 6. Right, what's a half as out of 6? Well, a half out of 6 is just half of that, which is 3 boxes worth. So if I just split this into the 6, I'll split this one into 6. So a half is 3/6, and a third, that's a third of that shaded, is 2/6. So we've got 3/6 plus 2/6 equals 5/6. Right, 3/6 and 2/6, 5/6. So I've found the equivalent fraction. Now, if you want to do this without drawing out the boxes, which you might well want to if you have very high denominators, I'm going to show you a way in which you can do it. I think, what has 2 been multiplied by to get the 6? Well, that's been multiplied by 3. So the top number, the numerator, has also got to be multiplied by 3. That keeps the fraction equivalent. So a half is equivalent to 3/6. If I times or divide the bottom and the top numbers by the same amount, my fraction remains equivalent. So the same thing applies here, except what did I times 3 by to get to 6? I times it by 2. So what have I got to times the top by? To keep the fraction equivalent, I have to times it by 2. So that helps me work out this equivalent fraction. So once I've found the lowest common multiple, I find my equivalent fractions, and then I can add them, and just the numerator to find my answer. I'm going to show you 2 more examples of this, this time without the diagrams, these times without the diagrams. So e.g. 3, let's take 2/3 plus 1/5. Right, so what I'm going to do is I need to find out the lowest common multiple of 3 and 5. So what number is in both, the lowest number that's in both the 3 and the 5 times table? Well, one fairly easy way to do it is to take the larger number usually and just start multiplying that and see if it's in the 3 times table. So 5 times 1, is 5 in the 3 times table as well? No. 5 times 2, is 10 in the 3 times table as well? No. 5 times 3, yes, it is in, both numbers are in the 15, but 15 is in both the 3 and the 5 times table. So I can make my shared or common denominator 15. So I can write out my sum just like that. So I've got something out of 15 plus something out of 15. With these being the same, I can add the fraction. Now what did I have to times the 3 by? I had to times by 5. So the top will have to be times by 5. So 2/3 is the same as 10 out of 15. What did I times that one by? By 3. 5 times 3 is 15, so the top has to be times by the same amount to keep the fraction equivalent, so it's 3/15. So in total, my answer is 13/15. Okay, and I'm going to give you one more example, e.g. 4. Same sort of idea. Let's take 3/8 and 1/6. Okay, so to find the lowest common multiple, I'm going to take this 8 and I'm going to list my multiples of 8 and think, is it in the 6 times table as well? So 8 times 1 is 8. Is 8 in the 6 times table? No. 8 times 2 is 16. Is 16 in the 6 times table? No. 8 times 3 is 24. Is 24 in the 6 times table? Yes. So my lowest common multiple is 24. So I'm going to put it out of 24. Now, 8 was times by 3 to get to 24. So the 3 will also have to be times by the same amount to create my equivalent fraction, which is 9/24. So 3/8 is the same, is equivalent to 9/24. What was 6 times by to get to 24? It was times by 4. So 1 has to be times by 4. So 1/6 is equivalent to 4/24. I add them together and I've got 13/24. And that's adding, and for subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, it's the same idea, except just at the end stage. So if this was take away instead, I would just do 9 take away 4 gives me 5/24. And that's what you need to know about adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators.